So the question remains, how would Israel respond to a conventional existential crisis with Iran? In late 2023, the hypothesis was tested in a high-level U.S. war game in which participants included members of U.S. executive branch, Republicans and Democrats in the Congress, leading academics, think tank experts, and Pentagon officials. The game starts in 2027 with Israeli intelligence reports that Iran is mating nuclear warheads to its long-range missiles. Consequently, Israel targets Iran's key nuclear and missile sites with U.S. standoff hypersonic missiles. That is followed by devastating conventional missile strikes against Israel with thousands of casualties, to which, in this projected 2027 scenario, Israel retaliates with aerial strikes. Iran responds by striking key Israeli nuclear and government buildings and withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, thereby signaling its readiness to deploy nuclear weapons. Washington urges Israel to stop escalation. But in an emergency that is perceived as existential for national survival, Israelis have little interest in U.S. concerns. Isolated and unable to halt Iran's possible nuclear strike, the Israeli PM greenlights a non-lethal nuclear demonstration detonation over a remote location in Iran, coupled with conventional strikes and cyber attacks against the main Iranian nuclear facilities and military sites. Instead of overwhelming Iran, these assaults strengthen resolve in Tehran, which begins preparing a new response. Then, Israel launches a nuclear strike of 50 weapons against 25 major Iranian military targets, including Russian air defense sites, which would be a rather surprising strategic move because it could draw in both Russia and the US, the world's greatest nuclear powers. Yet, in the US scenario that presumes Iran's offensive nuclear capabilities by 2027, Iran manages to launch a nuclear strike against an Israeli airbase with an American military presence. Intriguingly, initially the U.S. participants presumed that self-restraint would prevail in this high-level war game. Yet, the simulation's cold logic compelled them into a sequence of steps that quickly went nuclear. Assuming that a severe, conventional confrontation would soon drive Israel and Iran at the edge of a nuclear crisis, what would be the consequences of such an escalation? Projected human costs of an Israel-Iran nuclear confrontation. In one of the most comprehensive scenarios of the consequences of an Israel-Iran nuclear confrontation, Israel's hypothetical nuclear forces were presumed to entail at least 200 boosted and fusion weapons, with yields from 20 kilotons to 1 megaton, with an array of delivery capabilities. In turn, Iran was predicted to have some 10 to 20 nuclear weapons over time. Mainly fission devices in the range of 15 to 30 kilotons and with more limited delivery capabilities, addressing solely the nuclear exchanges. This scenario assumed multiple strikes by Israel in Iranian cities with some 1 to 2 million people, such as Arak, Ahvaz, Bandar Abbas, Esfahan, Kermanshah, Mashhad, Shiraz, Tabriz, and particularly Tehran with its 8.3 million residents. In turn, single strikes by Israel would hit cities with up to 1 million people, such as Arak, Ardabil, Hamadan, Kerman, Kazvin Rasht, Reza Iya, Yazd, and Zahedan. Iran would rely on single strike against Beersheva and Haifa, respectively, and a double strike against Tel Aviv and its 1.4 million people. The assumption was that Jerusalem would be sidelined due to its large Muslim population and holy sites. In addition to the stunning human toll, the presumed likely targeting by both nations of densely populated urban areas would result in devastating loss of critical industrial infrastructure and huge economic decline, coupled with highly damaging mental health and societal chaos, plus extremely destabilizing ripple effects throughout the region and the rest of the world. Iranian cities would suffer a high level of fatalities, without the ability to treat massive numbers of burn patients, huge logistical issues with trauma mass casualties, and relative unfamiliarity with radiation victim treatment. Large numbers of surviving thermal burn patients, many of them with concurrent trauma injuries, would be in desperate need of medical care, which won't be available. The concentration of over 8 million residents in Tehran would result in a large number of both fatalities and injuries. The percent of fatalities would increase from 44 to 67 to 86% of the city's population, with the use of multiple 100 kilotons, 250 kilotons, and 500 kilotons devices, respectively. There would be 1.5 million victims of thermal burns from either the 100 kilotons or 250 kilotons multiple weapon attacks, and from 750,000 to 880,000 severely radiation-exposed patients. After detonation, the thermal burn victims would likely receive no care, while the radiation victims would have to live with their severe pain in the hours and days after the attack. The survivors would be the living dead. In contrast to the broad expanses of Iran, Israel is small and narrow, with its population centered in just a few urban areas and thus highly vulnerable to nuclear warfare. The assumption is that Iran could deliver 5 15 kilotons devices through Israeli defenses, with detonations on 3 urban targets using 4 15 kilotons devices and 1 strategic site in its Negev nuclear center, read, in the proximity of Dimona. Even these relatively small weapons would cause great destruction. In the city of Be'er Sheva, half of the residents' growing season, leading to mass starvation over most of the world, coupled with massive ozone depletion, causing enhanced ultraviolet radiation. Even if the nuclear attack would be regional or locational, more people could die in the adjacent non-combatant areas than where the bombs were dropped, due to these indirect effects. With the proliferation of nuclear technology in the volatile Middle East, the likelihood of a catastrophic nuclear war, whether by purpose or accident, is elevated, even if it would result in utterly unacceptable outcomes in Israel and Palestine, the Middle East, and the world at large. 87. Ultimately, the Samson option remains at the heart of Israel's deterrent strategy of massive retaliation with nuclear weapons. As a last resort, Samson will bring down the roof and kill himself and the Philistines who capture him. It is a version of the Wagnerian Götterdämmerung, twilight of the gods, overshadowed by chaos, violence, and destruction. A nuclear confrontation remains one possible scenario of regional escalation. Not the most probable one, but certainly the most devastating option. In these considerations, the potential of widespread regional collateral damage has been largely absent. Such a scenario will be preceded by lethal conventional strikes. Yet, such assaults have not had adequate impact on the other components of the axis of resistance: Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, Ansarallah, the Houthis in Yemen, or the supporting forces in Syria and Iraq. Furthermore, the deployment of major conventional firepower is likely before full nuclear mobilization. Yet, the temptation to resort to ultimate weapons to contain ultimate risks is real. Since the reverberations would be felt around the world, the question is, how far would Washington, Brussels, and Beijing go to preempt such a scenario?